Hey everybody, welcome to another episode of Courtside with Beilinson Tennis, part of the Tennis Channel Podcast Network. As always, joined by my co-host and Hall of Famer, Steve Flink. We are also privileged to have with us the current tournament director of Indian Wells, Tommy Haas. Tommy has reached, in his playing career, the semifinals of the Australian Open 3 times and Wimbledon once. He reached the quarterfinal stage of each of the Grand Slam events. He's won 15 career titles in singles and has a silver medal from the 2000 Summer Olympics. And most recently, joined the ownership group of the San Diego Stingrays, a Pro Padel League franchise. Please welcome to the pod, Mr. Tommy Haas. Tommy, thank you so much.
Hi, David. Hi, Steve. Yeah, absolutely. My pleasure.
So let's talk current events right here. We're talking Pro Padel, San Diego Stingrays. Give us a background, how you got involved, how this all came about.
Yeah, it all just happened recently when I was approached by Ryan Redondo and his partner Gabriel, who obviously are part of the franchise down in San Diego, the Stingrays. I just kind of picked up a paddle myself, over the time during the pandemic a little bit. Some of my friends are really into it. They have turned some of their tennis courts in Los Angeles into a padel court. So I have a sort of, a love-hate relationship about that personally. But once you start to play paddle, you kind of feel like, okay, this is something that I can probably or want to get into pretty quickly. So I've been enjoying playing with lots of friends, mainly in Los Angeles. And when I was approached by them asking if I wanted to be part of the franchise and sort of maybe compete in the future and be part of some exhibition matches and sort of, help promote the sport a little bit, we thought about it a little bit. I thought about it a little bit. And, I came to the conclusion that, I really like it that much that, number one, I want to play it every chance that I get pretty much, which is, doesn't allow me with my time at times, but it is that much fun. And I thought, what an opportunity, what kind of, especially since I felt like it's getting really, really hot, especially in Europe, you go to places like Spain or you hear about it in Sweden, South America, friends of mine that are playing it now in Germany, Germany is always a little bit slow with these kinds of things. And my dislike towards pickleball. So I felt like that is one of those sports that games that I really, really want to, help promote.
Well, Steve, I think I speak for Steve on behalf of this. I mean, you're just not some random guy who picks up another paddle. You have a reputation to uphold. I mean, you're a heck of a tennis player. I mean, you gotta be pretty good here. Eyes are going to be on you, Tommy. You ready?
Yeah, no, I mean, that's what it's all about too, right? I mean, the tennis part is sort of, gone by. I've been retired now over some 6 years or so, and you always look for different challenges. Of course, I still love to compete, playing on the Champions Series or Legends Tour. When you get invited to all of those things, which are a lot of fun, and I've sort of implemented the fact that also we should continue playing where it actually counts and means something. So it's not just like a hit and giggle all the time. So we put some prize money on the line as well. So the guys have to kind of prepare for that and stay in shape, which is it's a good thing if you keep yourself motivated to try to stay in shape and stuff like that. But it's always nice to find a new challenge. I certainly also enjoy playing golf, but it just takes so much time away from the day and family. And, it's, when you travel, it's not always easy to travel with everything, etc. So paddle is sort of one of those things that I'm very intrigued by. It challenges me. It makes me want to learn, new moves. It's kind of like between squash and tennis where the ball can come off the wall. All kinds of different angles, and you still have to move pretty well. And the only thing is you do need a partner, right? It's 2 against 2 only in paddle as of now. So you got to try to find the right partner in order to sort of be in sync and then understand each other, which is one thing I didn't really do that much on the tennis tour. So that's something new for me. But again, as you get older in life and you look to what you want to do and what are the things that are going to be fun for you, sort of like on a competitive level, on a social level with people, friends, meeting new people. Paddle is right up there with one of the best things I've ever done. So, I do need to practice more. I do need to play more, that's for sure. And as this progresses, hopefully, and as it becomes bigger here in the US, I certainly will also try to do that. So that's a good challenge.
Well, we'll be watching. We'll be watching for sure, Tommy. And we are just a couple months. I mean, it's pretty short. We're just 2 months past basically another extremely successful event down in Indian Wells. Carlos Alcaraz won. I think I looked back. He didn't drop a set the whole tournament. He beat Daniil Medvedev 6-3, 6-2. Rybakina beat Sabalenka. You're seeing a nice rivalry there in the final. Another great event. we're definitely going to talk about your career, but first, I think Steve and I want to dive into a little bit about how you became tournament director of the event. We're seeing a lot of former players become tournament directors, and sure, back-to-back events between Indian Wells and Miami. You got James Blake, the tournament director down in Miami. Talk a little bit about how you got into that role.
Yeah, what's really interesting, obviously, is that, once you sort of understand that you are getting, towards the end of your career, which, I thought maybe on 3 different occasions that was going to be the case, with unfortunately, due to my injuries, I thought maybe after my hip surgery, maybe even before my third, shoulder surgery, I was like, okay, well, I don't know how this is going to, play out with the shoulder. But then once things got better, same with the hip at 32, 33, I became a dad. I still wanted to prolong my career, and always had in my mind that I would love to play in front of my daughter. So she realizes like, okay, this is what my dad did. And, I was still there, and we have some, footage and pictures and something to share for, such a big part of my life, obviously, which always will be. So once you kind of in that situation where you kind of know, like, okay, I'm heading towards 40, I'm getting sort of injuries again. I know that this is going to be pretty much the end. My ranking is dropping. I'm not going to go play challengers and try to get my ranking back up inside the top 100, top 50. So, having a good relationship to Mr. Larry Ellison, who I met through my father-in-law, David Foster, the great music producer, we've kept in touch. He's a big fan of the game of tennis. He obviously purchased and took over Indian Wells many, many years ago. And I had the privilege to stay at his compound in Rancho Mirage during the time I was still a player playing there. And so we've always talked about tennis. We've always talked about ideas. I've always given my input of what I would change, what I would do, sort of with the tour or with tournaments, et cetera, et cetera. And when the opportunity came, about to become tournament director at Indian Wells, I just kind of threw my name out there, not really knowing if it's something that I really want to actually do or not. But, the truth of the matter is we're talking about Indian Wells, an amazing tennis facility that's there all year round. We're talking of one of the most wanted events that everybody wants to come to, if you're not only a fan, but obviously the players, even sponsors love it. So I've always known that this is something I do want to be a part of. And, I know that the bar was already raised so very high when I, started my first year in 2017 as tournament director there, with new things that were happening, obviously building Stadium 2, with, the sort of like the restaurants around it, which is sort of like something new that we haven't seen in tennis before. I just like, again, those challenges to try to keep improving the facility, keep making it better for the tennis players in itself, which is obviously very important because that's ultimately why we are coming to watch them play, right? And making it, such a great fan base for the fans, where they, if you're walking around the facility, if you're watching tennis on Stadium 1 or on the outside courts, if you want to have a little bit of an area where you want to, cool off a little bit, so that everything sort of speaks for the event. And, the entire team there at Indian Wells have done a great job. And, we keep raising the bar, I feel like, every year. And tournaments are stepping up all around the world now as well. Obviously, take out the Grand Slams. They've always been sort of, a standout. But all the other Master Series 1000, now you see Madrid and you see Rome also being a 2-week event as well. Cincinnati catching up. I know there's some talks about maybe then, moving the tournament somewhere else as well. So there's a lot of things going on in the tennis world. And that's always, that's great for the sport. And that's ultimately how I got into it. And yeah, I'm loving every second of it. I really enjoy it. And always my goal is, like I said, to make it better.
Tommy, did you feel like you had a sort of a built-in advantage, though, at the start, given that you, it's my feeling has always been very popular among your fellow players. They respected your game. They respected you as a human being. They thought you were bright and very capable. What was that not kind of did that not help you at the outset to give you confidence that the players believed in you and that you could turn to them and that the whole thing could work?
Yeah, you certainly hope so, right? I mean, you try to stay in touch with them as many times as you can. You see them at other events. Luckily, I've had a decent career where you're invited to these Legends tournaments as well, where, you play the second week in Australian Open, French Open, Wimbledon. So it's always nice to have that face wash. I'm still obviously very friendly to a lot. Playing with Danielle Collins today here at the IMG Sports Academy. So, I still try to, play because I love the game and sort of be in the in and outs and ask questions, ultimately and see what there really is that we can do better. And, of course, it helps mainly to have, to have an owner like Larry Ellison that has the capability of making things happen if he's up for it, right? So that's really the key. There's, again, I see a lot of things that I think we can still improve in. But these are not small things, these are ultimately big things that will cost quite some money. And, he's invested a lot of money in the past already into the event. And, has made great adjustments and upgrades. Again, I don't know many tournaments or any sporting events where you can say, okay, you know what, I'm getting hungry. Let's have some great Nobu sushi, right? With just an unbelievable experience, right? Even at Stadium 2 now, you go to Nobu and you have an amazing meal. If that's something that you don't want to do, if it's not in your budget, even the concession stands, they're all very good. If you want to have a good hot dog, it's high end. It's just that feeling of like, wow, I just feel like, a lot of people that are coming to the event, they feel like they're being treated right. And that's ultimately what's amazing and what's important to us. And, getting the feedback from the players is obviously, a very, very big part of it. Yeah, like I said, it's been a fun ride. I want to continue to keep improving it and showing everyone that we care, to making it an amazing experience for everyone involved.
Oh, I mean, there's a reason they call it the fifth slam. Everybody loves it. The players and the spectators. I know, Steve, you've been going there for a long time, and you have such high regards for that event. Everyone does. It's a beautiful event. We talk a ton about your career, Tom. You had a great career. Unfortunately, like you referred to earlier, there were quite a bit of injuries, but your resiliency was unbelievable. That you kept coming back. We mentioned some of the highlights. I'm going to let Steve kind of talk a little bit about your career, maybe ask a few questions about maybe a specific match or two. And then I also want to talk about, I want to ask you, once Steve is done, about the influence that the legend Nick Bollettieri had on your tennis career.
Absolutely.
Steve, go ahead with anything you got with Tommy and his a match or two or anything specific.
Yeah, Tommy, what strikes me looking back on your career is the longevity. You mentioned injuries. I understand that. Injuries, interruptions. But boy, I mean, I remember you're playing Pete Sampras in the summer of '96 in Indianapolis. You're 18 years old. You're already becoming a factor. And then you establish a nice rivalry with him over the years with Andre Agassi. But then you went on to the next generation of the big three of Federer, Djokovic, Nadal. And it seemed to me that it's hard to even say what your peak was, but let's talk a little bit about 2002. You got to 2 in the world, and I think, to me, I want to know if you agree that was your best chance to win a major. You got to the semis of the Australian, and you're up 2-1 against Safin. And Safin came back and beat you. You would have played Thomas Johansson in the final. Might well have been your title. What happened in that match? Because I thought you were playing really well, and then Safin turned it around those last 2 sets. It seemed like a real opening for you. I remember thinking at the time, Tommy's probably going to win this tournament.
Yeah, it's definitely one of those matches that I probably look back thinking to myself that was one that probably got away, and potentially, that one slam that I maybe, could have won. I was up 2-1. I had a great Australian Open up until that point, I think beating Roger in the 4th round, and, Tom Martin in 5 sets, and then Rios, I think, in 4 sets, tough sets to get to the semis, and up 2-1 against Marat. And we've played a couple of times before, and I think I had the upper hand up until that point against him. And the rain came. I think fourth set. I think the first game or second game, I think the rain came down. I don't know exactly what happened, but the roof at that time closed quite slowly, and the court was a little bit wet. So we had about, I think, a 40-45 minute break until we got back out on the court, and it was really the first time, maybe the second time, but the first time at a Grand Slam at such a big stage that, I was interrupted doing a match of that magnitude, and I wasn't quite sure what to do. And I probably made a mistake, but going back to the locker room and lying back on the massage table and stretching out instead of kind of keeping moving. And I remember, I think Marat was, he just kind of got off the court and he stayed there and just kind of kept moving, kept running around, because when I got back out of the locker room, he was still there, kind of doing the same thing. And, I might have actually, because of that, sort of lost a little bit of a step at the beginning of the 4th set. And he came out swinging, he came out firing, not missing much. And that set slipped away really, really quickly. And then in the beginning of the 5th, he had sort of the momentum. And we all know when Marat was feeling well and he was hitting the spots with his serve and the ground strokes, he just kind of became a better player. And I never really found that level again. And then everything just sort of went really, really fast, unfortunately. And that was a big bummer. That was a big setback. And to be honest with you guys too, during that tournament, I already started feeling my shoulder that something was not right. That was the beginning of 2002. And so for the entire rest of that year, every now and then, a couple of weeks, I kept feeling some really sharp, weird pain in my shoulder. At times I couldn't even lift my arm. I couldn't even shake people's hands. And I was going, this is crazy. And then at times it would completely disappear again. And I kept playing, pretty solid, I was playing just very consistent tennis. I wasn't losing many matches to players, outside the top 10. And then I got to the finals in Rome, got a pretty nice beating there from Andre. These are the days when, all these Master Series were still best of 5. And, after he won the first 2 sets, with my mental weaknesses at times, I was already kind of like, okay, I'm not coming back from this. So, but it was still, I got to number 2 in the world at that point, playing consistent tennis because I had a great end of 2001, winning in Stuttgart a Master Series 1000, only to find out after that event that Tiriac is moving that tournament to Madrid, which is for a German player growing up in Germany. Then that was like another one of those hits where you kind of go, wait, I just won the tournament that I've always wanted to win indoors, which I love to play in Germany in 2001. And now I'm hearing that I cannot even defend my title there the following year. Which was tough. So, but yeah, I mean, it's been a crazy sort of, a career in many ways, with some expectations. I had a very quick start getting into the top 100. As you mentioned, my first, I think, wild card into an ATP event was in Indianapolis in '96 when I was 18, when I turned pro. And I got to play, Pete Sampras, who also trained a little bit at the academy when I got there when I was 13 years old, right? Like in 1991. And so, playing him and then on center court was obviously like a little dream come true. And, it was just typical Pete Sampras match, 1 break each set and then serves you off the court. So that was great. Shortly after that, I qualified for my first Grand Slam to play Michael Stich, who obviously another German legend in the game, Wimbledon champion. So I was very pumped and excited to play that match. And, did pretty good overall, lost 7-5 in the 4th. And so the career kind of went in the right direction. Took me a little bit to kind of, find out exactly my kind of game style and, the mental toughness and, the grind, day in and day out and, accepting losses, accepting, wins and trying to get better and better. And so in 99, I reached, the top 10 for the first time, which was obviously always a goal. And, and there's a lot of noises, as you guys been around tennis enough, there's a lot of noises that go on behind the scenes all the time, right? If it's, parents, if it's family, if it's your agent, if it's other coaches, obviously with Nick Bollettieri, things were always a little bit crazy and different because, he had so many players that wanted him to be there and coach him, etc. So you always had to try to find your time. Obviously, I was lucky enough that I was one of his favorites and that he would always take time for me. But I had a traveling coach, obviously with David Red Amy at the time. And so there was always noises and people saying you should try this, maybe try another coach, go that way. And so at some point you do, and then you realize that's not really a good fit for me. That doesn't work. I don't think he has enough energy for me, So it really, you have to try to find out, what works for yourself as well. What type of.
Sorry to interrupt, Tommy. I just wanted
please.
you to touch on a couple of nice highlights. Beating Agassi at Wimbledon in '98. A brief account of that. That was a nice moment. He won the tournament in '92. He was a better player on grass than many people realized. How did that feel at the time to topple Agassi on the lawns of Wimbledon?
Yeah, another one of those situations. Obviously, when I first got to the academy, Nick and Andre were still very tight, and I got many chances to play with Andre. I got to go to a couple of tournaments with him when I was like, 15, 16 years old. So Andre to me was always one of my idols as well. One of those guys that I looked up to and loved his game. Still to this day, I think he's one of the best strikers we ever had in the game. And so, when I actually played him first couple of times, at the age of, 19, 20, there was one beating in between there that he gave me in Scottsdale, I remember. And, so then when you kind of, go to center court, Wimbledon, first time for me to play Andre. And I remember when he won it in 92 against Ivanisevic, you were so pumped for him to win that match. And I got all the pictures and, Nick's signature and Andre's signature, which I think Nick signed back in the day to get, to have the pictures with them holding Wimbledon trophy. And then just, a quick 6 years later, me walking out there on center court playing, literally one of my idols was like, wow, I was in awe. I was very nervous and kind of like saying to myself, I finally arrived where I want to be as well. So, I know he didn't play his best match. And it was also a little crazy because I think there was one bad line call in the 3rd set that gave me, a big chance to go up 2-1, which I did. And then it was getting late at night. So we had to come back the next day. And I heard that he flew in rackets, for the next day, for the next match to go play with a different racket. So lots of things, lots of drama going on. And, again, my problem is that I was always more the player that wanted to play on center court. I wanted to play on the big stage. That was my sort of, great thing, but also a bad thing because, the next following match, the 4th round, I was supposed to play on on the old graveyard against John Manlottom, and I was hoping that I was going to be like at least a smaller stadium, because, you know, going on center court Wimbledon for one match and then going back to court 5 for your next match, it's like, for me, it was like, I'm playing a different tournament right now. This has nothing to do with Wimbledon anymore. It's like, this is ridiculous, in my opinion. And everybody would always say, well, just win this one and the next one, and then you get back to center court. And I said, yeah, I understand that. But the mental side of me going to that place of like literally playing, you know, and I love Wimbledon, and I, you know, have the most respect for this event. But, you know, when you are playing on court 5, 6, and 7, when people are walking by on the sides and you see the big stadiums around you, it's not the same feeling. You know, it's fun to hit some balls and kind of, you know, warm up and stuff like that. It's great. But coming from center court to go back on that court to play a real match, it's very, very hard to do. Especially when you have that mental side that I have, which, you know, a lot of people maybe don't care, but, you know, everyone's different that way. But still, was a great match. I was happy to win it. Obviously, we'll always remember that one. And yeah, great times.
Tommy, in 2009, same venue, Wimbledon, you beat Novak Djokovic, lost to Roger in the semis. Talk about beating the young Novak, beat him a couple of times on the grass that year. How special was that? He already had emerged in 07 and 08. He'd done some great things, and he was 3 in the world behind Roger and Rafa. So what about beating Novak and then playing a very good match against Roger in the semis, 6-5 and 3? It was pretty tight.
Yeah, you know, I always felt like I had a really good game for grass with my all-round game. I had a good slice. I could come into the net and volley, and, you know, I always felt like if I get going and feel confident and feeling physically fit, you know, I would be tough to beat. And you know, back in the day, I only played 2 grass court tournaments all the time. It was Halle, you know, sort of like as a warm up, and then it was Wimbledon. So depending on your draws, depending on your injuries, you know, a lot of times I couldn't play because I wasn't even ready to play. You know, I think one year also I got to the 4th round. I beat you know, Tursunov in the 3rd, but then I ruptured a muscle in my lower abdominal. Couldn't even play Roger in the 4th round. So I felt like there is got to be one sort of moment in Wimbledon where the stars align. And it was for me then in 2009. I won Halle a couple of weeks, I think, prior to that, where I actually beat Djokovic also in the finals there. And I was feeling good. And then, you know, you're seeded and, you know, things are going well. And I felt like, you know, there's really only one player that can probably beat me that year. And, you know, again, of course, it happened to be Roger Federer, who I just lost a tough match to in the 4th round at the French Open, where I actually was up 2 sets to 0. And I had that break point at 3-4, where I felt like, oh my God, if I win this game or this point, I'm going to win this match. And he comes up with a great shot. And then it's sort of like, you know, the next 5 minutes were very crucial, and he's finding his game, and, you know, he's starting to fist pump himself, and, you know, everything turned sort of like, you know, as we always seen, you know, for Roger's way. But I felt like I was right there. And even in the semis, you know, against Roger, you know, I only got broken at 5-6 for the first time in the second set, right? So 6-7, 5-6, I'm holding serve. I have some opportunities, but I never really, even when I was looking back, or even when I felt like I was on that court, I always felt like I never really did have a chance in that particular match in Wimbledon semis in 2009. And that was always frustrating, because I always felt like I had a good matchup against Roger. But that particular day, you know, he did everything, you know, a few percent better than I did, I think, at my height of my game. Moved a little bit better first serve. You know, forehand was more accurate and had more stuff on it. Maybe my backhand in both of our highs, I would maybe say my backhand was maybe a little bit better, selfishly. But, you know, so, you know, lost that match, and, you know, was kind of hoping like, wow, why couldn't have been at least the final for once, right? Like always, sometimes you play in 4th round, you play in, you know, quarters, you play in semis. Like when I had the chance to, you know, once maybe get to that, you know, that finals of a slam. So, you know, it is where it is. You can always cry about it at the end of the day. It's not going to change anything. But, you know, still a great accomplishment for me in my eyes. And yeah, just came up short again, unfortunately.
What were the keys, though, to the 2 wins over Novak? You didn't say much about those, but that was impressive to beat him back-to-back on the grass.
Yeah, you know, I think in Halle in the finals, from what my understanding was, I think, you know, there's always a great fun event after the semis that evening in Halle, where, you know, Gary Weber has a fashion line, or used to be. I don't know if they are still. They always had like a little bit of a show, a concert going on that night. And the two finalists would always have a little, you know, speech they have to give, or a little Q&A on stage. And from my understanding, I heard that Novak was out up until about maybe 3 or 3:30 in the morning, knowing that he has to play a final the next day. And maybe that I took that a little bit to my advantage. And you know, and again, I was playing some really good tennis, and, you know, the grass courts in Halle are also a little bit different. You would get away with, like, you know, some, stabbing volleys that are not great and some bad bounces here and there. And so the movement sometimes, you couldn't really do much with that all the time, because sometimes it's just like, okay, typical kind of like grass court tennis in the old days. And, I was obviously feeling confident. And I think that helped me, though, when I played him in the quarters in Wimbledon, because I felt like, okay, I just beat him. If I can kind of have that same mentality, that same sort of, attacking mode tennis. I think I served and volleyed pretty much all first and second serves during that year, because it was still, I felt like the balls were maybe a little bit quicker than they are nowadays. And that was my my mentality going into that match with my coach, Thomas Haas, at the time. And it worked out well. And I kind of got under his skin a little bit of, jumping on top of him, playing aggressive, chipping, charging a little bit. And that was a good strategy.
Tommy, one more Roger moment I want you to talk about that amazed me at the time was when you beat him in 2017 on the grass in Stuttgart. And you're 39 years old. I mean, and you lost the first set 6-2 and squeaked out a 10-8 tiebreaker, beat him 6-4 in the third. How satisfying was that? Because Roger had won the Australian at the start of that year, and he was about to win Wimbledon again, his last Wimbledon in 2000.
Yeah, that was in, like you said, 2017, right?
Yes.
Yeah, so, obviously incredible because, we have a great picture of him holding up the trophy in 2017 in Indian Wells. That was my first year as tournament director. I wasn't allowed to play because of the ATP rule, which I obviously still wanted to play in Indian Wells. And then Larry Ellison actually stepped in and says, listen, I want you to play as well. We'll figure it out. And I said, no, you know what? I'm going to do this job right because I respect the game and, it's fine. But then, Roger didn't play any of the clay court events. So it was his first match back after about a 2.5 month break. And I sneaked out a good match against Pierre Herbert, I believe, a tight one. And, obviously, again, looked at the draw and I was like, okay, well, it's not the best draw in the world, but getting to play Roger in Germany in front of my family on grass. My daughter was there at the time. I think she was six years old. And I was just like, let's just go out there and have fun and just enjoy the moment. This was sort of like my goodbye tour, especially in the German events. I was going to play Halle after that, and then Hamburg, Germany, and Kitzbühel, obviously as well, German-speaking country. So that was the goal. That was the mindset. And I remember vaguely that I was down, like you said, 6-2, maybe 2-1. I don't know if I was down a break already in the second set, but it was 2-1. And I look over to the clock to see, and I think we've played about 26, 27 minutes up until that time. And I'm just kind of talking to myself like I always did. And I was like, God, come on, let's at least try to get to an hour. Right, because anything under an hour is like a lesson, it's a beatdown, right? And I'm just thinking, this is embarrassing in some ways. Come on, just try to hang in there. And I think I saved a break point maybe at 4-all, and then maybe even a match point at 4-5 or something like this. And I was like, okay, I'm hanging in there. Somehow sneak out the tie break, and I'm sitting back down, and I'm looking at the clock, and it says like an hour and 25 minutes. I'm like, well, this is great. Life couldn't be better. Out here enjoying myself, full house. People are having a good time. We're playing some good tennis. And now I'm thinking to myself, okay, let's just hang in there and see what happens. And then I go up a break, I think 3-2 in the third, and I'm going, wow, I have a chance to actually win this match. I'm serving pretty good, so this is pretty impressive. And then on the flip side of that coin, I can feel my lower back tightening up during that match. So I'm so happy, I'm so relaxed, I'm just loving it. And on the other side, my devil on the other side is telling me, I can't believe that I'm having issues again with my back at this moment that I'm trying to enjoy so much, because I feel like that this is one of those injuries again that's going to drag along for a couple of days or weeks. I win the match, of course. Amazing things. As I'm walking to the net and shaking his hand and the umpire's hand, I'm thinking to myself, maybe it's just time to take the microphone and say, that's it. I can't really top it, right? I mean, beating Roger on grass in Germany, my daughter's here, my family's here. This is as good as it gets. Like, I'm good because I already know my back is so bad that I don't think I can play the next match the way I even want to. I might as well just be done. Of course, I didn't do it because of the obligation of playing Halle, playing Hamburg. I wanted to play them. And then, the instinct comes back and says, oh, maybe I can still move around good enough to somehow play. Literally couldn't move the next day. I almost told the tournament director, look, I can't play on Friday. Tried everything I could. Wasn't even anywhere close of being able to serve and volley the way I needed to or move. And I lost. And so, again, such a tennis high to then 48 hours later to have such a tennis low. And I was just like, oh, you know what? This is a good sign that this is over, because I can't take it anymore with these ups and downs, with these injuries coming in my way of playing my best tennis. Because after I beat Roger, I would have thought, hey, this is a good chance to actually win the title now. That would have been, the goal at least. It's like, let's go. But still, it's always something good to have, Roger and I are pretty friendly, so it's good to say, hey, the last match when it counted, at least I won that one, because he took many others away from me, so that's okay.
You had you got 4 wins over him, Tommy, and you beat Pete 3 times, you beat Andre 4 times, you beat Novak, I believe, 3 times, the 2 on grass and 1 more. What was Rafa the most confounding for you? Was he the toughest in some? I know you didn't get as many cracks at him, but why was he so?
I played him 3 times, and actually looking back in Cincinnati, which wasn't one of his best tournaments, I probably had some good chances. I think I played him twice there, excuse me, and both times I had set points in the first set, and they didn't go my way. And then those high forehands up against my backhand with my shoulder, and it was always like running around it, trying to crunch my forehand. And I always felt like there too, I just didn't have enough firepower at the time anymore to sort of really hurt him in many ways. And it became clear to me when I played him in 2009. I think it was the 3rd round in the Australian Open. I was playing actually really good tennis, and the first set and a half, 2 sets were pretty competitive, especially for my understanding how I played. And I lost 4-6, 4-6. But there were a few points that I played, and I was just like, wow, I won that point like 2 or 3 times over, and then I still lost it. And I was like, this is ridiculous. Like, just the movement and the shots he would hit, and the lefty and the high spin up against my backhand. It was just not a great sort of matchup for me against him. So I'm always happy that I never actually had to play him at the French Open on clay, because that would have just been a complete nightmare.
Yeah. You and a lot of other players would feel the same exact way.
A lot of people would agree with that. That's true. That's true.
Yeah. Well, hey, you've been very generous with your time, and I know you got some plans in a little bit. Before we end, I know Nick Voluntary, the tennis world lost a legend, right? Nick Voluntary, and Nick had an effect on so many tennis players. So many people within the tennis industry itself, not just the players that he coached. Talk a little bit about the effect that he had on you and the effect that he had on your career.
Yeah, it's funny that we're having this conversation. I played for the first time 3 days ago at the academy without Nick being there anymore. First time. So it was a little eerie. It was a little weird. There's a statue there of him that they've done a good job with. And, you look at it and you just kind of know, wow, and, there's no phone calls anymore. I won't see him. And he had such a huge impact, of course, in my career, in my life, and so many fun, incredible, crazy moments as well. So I'll be forever grateful for the times. He'll live in the memories, forever. And of course, again, so many stories. Voluntary Tennis Academy, as I know it when I first got there, was obviously very different. Such a competitive playground. All the players from all around the world, and great coaches, and really special, really small. I always kind of want to look at it that way in many ways, but then you look at it what it is today, the IMG Sports Academy and all the opportunities that you have there, and the facility is phenomenal. You kind of also look back and you go, God, can you imagine if we would have had a facility like this in the early 90s? All of the gyms and locker rooms and recovery centers and the check-ins, the restaurants. It's just a whole nother level now. Other sports as well that you could have played on the side, right? I'm already telling them to maybe put up some paddle courts as well for next time. Yeah, just incredible memories, incredible time. I was really happy that I got to spend some time with him towards the end of his life, and had a few great moments which were very important to me. And I have so many friends, and still some of my closest friends that were there from the beginning with me, also at Voluntary Academy. And we always have a few chats about him here and there, which is great. So yeah, what a vision he had. First one to build an academy, and now you have so many all around the world. And IMG Sports Academy recently just got sold to a hedge fund company, right, for a decent price. So it's a pretty amazing what he's accomplished.
Steve, then they talk about Nick, Steve. Everyone we talk to, and everyone, in the tennis world, they say it's the stories, right? So many stories with Nick. Such a legend. And again, it's such a huge effect on the players that he coached and in the tennis industry as a whole. Steve, before we let Tommy go, any final thoughts?
No, just Tommy, can you imagine a figure like Nick ever emerging again in the game of tennis? Because he just had that insatiable appetite, endless energy. If he said he slept 4 hours a night, I wouldn't believe him. I would say it was 2. And yet he just threw himself into life every single day. And then the cavalcade of players that he coached. Can you imagine ever again somebody having that deep an impact in the coaching industry?
Not really. I mean, not to say that there aren't many coaches out there or people that are, tennis fanatics and they would like to try to go in sort of a direction like that. I always want to say, Nick was one of a kind and we'll never see anybody like him. I think a lot of people would agree with that, with his sunglasses, the color that he had. I mean, there's so many iconic things that he was all about. And, sort of like a trailblazer in many ways. If you want to compare someone a little bit to him, I think these days, maybe you could say Patrick Maratugulu is sort of like the new sort of Nick Boiteri in some ways, that has a lot of passion for the game, that has built this amazing academy himself in the south of France and, welcomes everybody that, wants to pursue their dreams. And, in that way, maybe he's a modern Nick Boiteri in some ways. And I think, Patrick would probably speak very, very highly of Nick and probably looked up to him in many ways as well, and maybe looked at a few things that he did and, tried to sort of implement them into his life and, try to also maybe, in his memory, do the best that he can, in the coaching world. So, I think he would probably be the closest thing to him right now.
Well, Tommy, thank you again for your time. I'm looking behind you. I'm looking to see if I can get Roger Federer. There's a Grigor Dimitrov, maybe even a Novak. I'm not seeing them because the Padel thing doesn't work out. If the Padel thing doesn't work out, we know there's some musical talent. You mentioned your father-in-law. We've seen the footage. We've seen the footage of you. Steve and I are not going to put you on the spot and do this, but the Chicago cover of Hard for Me to Say I'm Sorry is absolutely fantastic. You're lucky Steve and I are nice people because we're not going to make you do this on your own for another rendition of it.
And I'm not allowed. It's not in the contract. I can only sing those words with Grigor and Roger. And we're trying to extend the one-handed backhand boys. There are still a few around, so we are working on that. It's actually funny because the next Laver Cup is in Vancouver, Canada. And my father-in-law, David Foster, is actually in charge of the music, and they're doing like a charity event before it starts. So I know Roger will be there. I will be there. Maybe Grigor, if he has a good year, makes the team for the Laver Cup. Maybe, another one-handed backhand player like the name of Tsitsipas who might join us. So maybe there's a chance of creating something again. But we should probably ask the fans and see, have a survey going out if they really want that or not.
Well, for those that haven't seen it, go check it out on YouTube. The four of them were amazing. So I say part 2, let's get it done in Vancouver if we can. Tommy Haas, thank you so much for sharing some time tonight, and good luck with your new venture.
Thank you so much. It's good to see you guys.
Yeah, same here, Tommy. Best of luck to you.
Thank you. Same. Bye.